Alright guys, this is Frederick Baker. He's going to be your next speaker. Okay?
Hey, y'all need to stand up and stretch or anything? Okay. So I want to talk about creating connected open classroom, and to a lot of people it's this crazy left field idea that all education should be free, and that you're going to give away everything that you've created, and there's no system, and that is the extreme of open education. But it's a lot more practical than that, and a lot of the things that you're probably already doing are at least have a foothold in open education, and so that's more where I want to focus, not the ideological, however you pronounce it, human rights for everybody, but more than how can I connect my classroom with the larger world. Let me see this. So I've got my website. I added a little page, 2013 COTL. It's fredwbaker.com, and that should be at the bottom of these also, although it looks like it's cut off. But I'll post it again at the end. So you guys, if I have a wordy slide or something, don't worry about it. And I'll have the audio up eventually, and the slides are there now. So I want to just briefly talk about what is openness and why would you use openness, and then go look at just, I guess more briefly, at the tools and the assignments and the guidelines that you would find in general open education classes. And there's a few examples of active open courses on that page if you go to it. So first, what is it? And I don't know if you guys are confused about this picture, but I have no idea what that is. I just thought for a wet slide that would be pretty decent. Find something I've got no clue what it is. It looks like there's some DNS codes, and I don't know, an IT person may know. But openness, it's a philosophy. It looks for to be inclusive, right? You're trying to every person has value, and so you try and include those people and their perspectives. You try and empower them. You try and give them a voice. Hey, come on in. And so I've been looking at it for a few years, and the common themes that I see are transparency and the reduction of barriers are the primary things. Hey, come on in. So you want to create an environment that's really transparent, very visible in all fields, and then something that's not going to be inhibitive for students trying to engage with each other or engage with the content. And to me, the idea that a transparent and low barrier environment is going to also enable students to share with other people and share with people outside of the classroom, and it's going to allow accessibility from outside into the classroom. It's going to allow accessibility to content and allow for people to connect, make genuine, honest connections, and that's a big part of this. So when openness, the philosophy of openness is applied to education, this is what I think it's really all about. It's an experiment, right? Nobody has the answer. I don't know if the answer actually exists, but you've heard of MOOCs, and you've heard of, Classrooms Connect, and they're opening their classrooms. The big idea is that it's an experiment. It's a big, grand experiment where everybody's trying to design this effective learning environment, right? It's going to be richer for the students. It's going to be more inclusive of everybody. It's going to provide a voice to people who may not have it. But it's human-centered. That's a big, big part of it. You're trying to be fair to everybody. Hey, come on in. Come on in. So why openness? Why be open? Some of the benefits for being open are that it provides a social context for the course. So the idea is that the content's going to be grounded. You're going to have a community. There's going to be a sense of community generated within the course just from designing assignments and things that will allow them to connect with each other, and creating policy decisions and rules that are going to allow them to engage with each other and engage with the content in ways that aren't necessarily dictated or heavily dictated. They need to be guided, though, which is another important part. It also allows the classroom, the community that you've developed in the classroom, to connect with the larger community. So an example would be if you're studying a research methodology class, that your students could connect with research methodologists or people who are experienced or practicing in that field outside, bring that content in. I think that it helps limit marginalization, because when we design things, we generally design things for the mean. That's what's most effective. That's what's going to fit that 68%. The problem with that, of course, is that there's people on either side that kind of get left out. And so one of the big arguments for universal design, for instance, the classic example is the curb ramp. They developed curb ramp to allow wheelchairs access, and it turns out to be good for strollers and guys pulling heavy carts of things. You know, it's easier for people who maybe have problems, mobility problems, and it turns out that designing with more people in mind has benefits for beyond what was initially thought. Now, how much could it possibly cost to add a curb ramp, right? Hey, come on in. So that's another important aspect, is that you're taking a small step and just trying to be more inclusive and considering more people. I think that it helps encourage active and authentic engagement, because the students are doing it more on their own terms, right? You're not so much dictating what it is for them to do. They're allowed to pick their own topic, or they're allowed to connect with other people more at their discretion. Also, I think that it encourages connectivity with people by having porous boundaries, right? The rules aren't, you're not set in this classroom using this specific book and these specific assignments. It's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more flexibility built in. So how? And this is really, I guess, the point of it. This is a model for different types of open education classes. There's the traditional MOOC, and that paper is available on the website. Yes?
I don't know what a MOOC is.
Oh, you know, I'm sorry. This is because I'm immersed in it. I'm very sorry. A MOOC is a massively open online course. So I guess I assumed that it was common because it's all the buzz right now. It's the Stanford Artificial Intelligence course that they had a few years ago that had 200,000 people is one type of MOOC, and Coursera and Udacity are companies that have started up that are interested in making education available. But at the extreme, an open education course, a massively open online course, is one that has, it lets anybody in the world access and engage the content for free with no cost, no reservation, on their own terms. There are different types of them, though, and that's my argument. So just a real quick rundown. The three major types are what I call an ill-structured here, and there's things like there's a lot of this going on in Canada, but there's trying to think, the Change MOOC is one. Change.mooc.ca is a website that you can see more about that. Khan Academy is an example where you kind of go and engage with the content on your own terms and set your own pace. A different model of that would be Coursera, Udacity, where it's more like a traditional classroom, but everybody's got access to it. So on one hand, you've got communities, and on another hand, you've got people accessing basically a traditional class. And then what I'm personally more interested in is anchored open courses, which are traditional higher ed courses, which you may or may not teach, and then opening those up. So how do we open our classes that we already have and allow people outside of our traditional boundaries connect with our class, and what are the benefits to our learners if we do that? So that's specifically what I'm talking about. I'm glad you asked that, because there's nothing worse than not knowing what's going on. So open education has been going on for a long, long time, and this is actually from '75, from a book in 1975, but open education used to be purely physical structures, and you may or may not have heard they tried to break all the walls down and have 1,000 classes in an auditorium, and it didn't work for obvious reasons, but there were benefits to it, and there are still open education classes, but there are issues with it if you're trying to teach and there's 5 other classes. The good news is that education's now mostly, I guess, hybrid is the dominant, and then web is close to that. So I think that the concept of open education applies really well to online and hybrid classes, because it's a way to build a community, and I think that the web is pushing us towards being more connective and collaborative anyway. So the 4 rules that apply to the open education class that I think apply still are the freedom rule, the idea that the students should have learner agency, right? They should have some ownership of their experience. The environment rule, which is that you should have rich resources. People should be able to access content and access other people and discuss that content. The personalization rule, which is the idea that you shouldn't just be treated in some modernistic blanket fashion. You should be able to engage the content personally, have personal discussions and interactions with the content, with each other, with the instructor. And the respect rule, it's just basically to realize that there's people on the other end and that it's not, and I know we all try and do that, but definitely to keep in mind that our decisions have impacts on other people. So open learning environments these are some of the common features of them. And again, it's learner collaboration. They're allowed to connect with their peers, the larger community. There's the universal ownership. That's the agency of the class experience. There's the porous boundaries. Trying to be transparent in policies and in activities that go on within the class. And content is interesting. I've got openly licensed, but really publicly accessible content. Open access journal research versus closed access. It's not always equivalent, but if you can look there and find something that works, that's good. One of the biggest issues that this impacts is that, I don't know if it's like this at University of West Florida or other colleges, but when the semester ends, traditionally you can't get into your class anymore, and there are projects that attempt to make student work available for the long term and give them ownership of it, like a domain of one's own project at University of Mary Washington. But that's a real issue, that the students can really engage with this content hardcore for 3 months and then never see it again. It diminishes the value of what you're willing, the effort that you're willing to put in, I think. So again, two of the main concepts are transparency and reduction of barriers. That's what you want to design into your class. That's what you want to think about when you're trying to figure out what decisions to make, what policies to implement, what assignments. You want them to be transparent. You want to have as much visibility in the process as possible, and you want to reduce any barriers that you can do without. Does that mean that they should be extreme? Of course not. But where possible, I think that if you implement these things, you'll really benefit, and your students will too. So these two are the wordy slides, and I'm sorry, but this is the meat of it. The transparency, how does that come about? A lot of open education environments, open classes, operate in public spaces. So they'll use websites like, they'll use Twitter, right? And who uses Twitter in here? Anybody? It's a couple people. Yeah, I mean, it's great if it's a professional space where you can connect and follow researchers and give short bursts and share papers, and you can have chats, but you have to be authentic with it. You can't just do Twitter this week and then drop it next week and never see it again. Google Plus, does anybody use Google Plus? There's video chats, there's streams, it's like Facebook on steroids, really. But again, Facebook is, I think, and you may or may not agree with me, but that's more of a personal thing. I get a little weirded out when my instructors or somebody tries to Facebook friend me. Not so much anymore, but definitely I think of it as a more intimate space. But just to move on, they'll use publicly accessible content resources, open access journals, Khan Academy, MIT's open courseware, things like that. Collaboration and connective tools is another thing they'll use, like Digo. Has anybody heard of Digo? Digo is awesome. It is social bookmarking. It's Delicious is the other social bookmarking, and Digo has moved one step beyond that. They have community groups. They have web highlighting, so you can just open up a web page and highlight that web page. But the big feature is that when you mark a web page, you can tag it. Oh, this is about EMT, and it's got to do with blood pressure and some other things. And then you tag that. You can create a list. Other people come back and they can access that list, or you can go to the Digo site and type in blood pressure, and everything that somebody's tagged blood pressure is going to come up. So it's just being social. These are some of the connective technologies. Linux is a great example. Firefox is open source. If you guys use Firefox, that's a great example of an open source. These are not all open source, but the other side is reduced barriers. I'm going to have to kind of rush through this last part, so I'm sorry. But it's about enabling student agency, again, and I've kind of touched on these things. Some options are to allow students to generate their own assignments, or choose their own topics for their papers, or maybe give them a point scale. You have 600 points to distribute between tests, project, and or quizzes. So you can choose, I'm not really good at quizzes, but I'm really good at a project, and they can focus, and they can choose kind of what's going to be what they're going to sacrifice, what they can focus on. It's a good strategy. And encouraging democratic connection and collaboration, so giving the students a voice, just trying to give them the opportunity to really do their own thing, make their own statement, control the class space. They definitely need guidance. I mean, instructors have to be there, and you have the expertise, but they need to be allowed to have their own hands in it, I guess is a good way to put it. And real-time feedback structures, which are important. There's a variety of different ways, but the big thing is to have something in place so that you can actually understand when you're doing a good job and when you're not, and when they are getting it and when they're not, and when, what's going on essentially. The caveat is that it has to be authentic, right? Students can smell a faker. They know when something's not genuine. They know when it's just for the checklist, and so they treat it like a checklist. And so it's important to be sure that if you're going to use Twitter, you make sure that you try and be engaged in Twitter, try and learn it, try and experiment with it, and try not to just use it for next week we're going to be on Twitter and then never respond if they tweet you after that. Or, letting them select their own groups, but then just basically forcing them to work with people that nobody would really want to work with. And these are not things that I don't think these are super common, but these are things to be aware of. So openness, the good news is openness is a continuous construct. So you don't have to be fully open, you don't have to be fully engaged, but it is an experiment. I'm definitely going to skip a couple of this. Here's a couple of questions that you can ask, which is just basically how can I better allow my students to connect with each other? Basically, how can I make my course more transparent? How can I reduce barriers in my course? These type of things. So when does openness occur? And this is really, it's up to you, right? You have the power to encourage your students. You have the power to build transparency into your environment. And it's an experiment. It's an experimentation. So you're not going to get everything right. And it's all about engaging with your students and asking them what is their experience, what can you do to make their experience better, and playing with rules like giving them essay assignments to get them to engage with the content, and then seeing how that works. It's formative feedback. So ask, play, engage. I mean, those are the important aspects. And to start in your classroom, start where you have control, and then move out from there as you feel is necessary. Sharing is probably one of the primary staples for openness. It's the idea that we all benefit. When I learn something and I share that knowledge, everybody else has access. So if you share that with your colleagues, if you share that on a website, if you blog, those are wonderful ideas. And I'm sorry to rush through this last piece, but this is my contact information. Feel free to email me, write me, tweet me, call me. I guess my call's not on there, but website, whatever you want, and I will fill in any gaps or discuss this. And if anybody's got any questions, I'd love to hear.
So how is
Digo
different than Pinterest?
Okay, so Pinterest is like a social media network for picture taking, right? And it's social in that I've got some boards, and I don't use Pinterest much at all, but I'm a little familiar with it. Say you're interested in cooking. There's pictures of boards, and you scroll through those. I don't think they're as granular. I guess it's more visual and less granular. Whereas Digo it's specifically bookmarks that you would just on Google Chrome or whatever web browser you use. Instead of having 1,000 bookmarks and folders, you now can load that into Digo. And the good news is, if you're interested in, I'm interested in open education, well, there's an open education group or 5 on there, and so I can connect with other people who are interested. I can follow their list, and whenever they upload something, it lets me know, or they can follow my list. And you have options to make list public or private. Whereas I think of Pinterest, and again, I don't know it that well, but I think of Pinterest as more of a, it's like an idea. It's a way to like to survey ideas and like get inspiration and get good ideas.
I think I use Pinterest
different.
like you use Digo.
You very well may. I think they just serve different purposes. Digo is more. I think of Digo more as a research.
It's not
tool.
image-based though, right?
It's not image-based, but it is web-based. If you have a web page, it connects that web page with other web pages through tags, and you can highlight it. You can see other people's notes. So it's more of a social scholar thing, and Pinterest is more of a visual. Like I know somebody that uses.
I'm in the arts, so like the visual.
No, I'm definitely I'm a very visual person, and I think they just serve different purposes. I was just about to say somebody was telling me at a school that they have a clip up system for behavior management, and they got the idea on Pinterest to if you can lose credit was their old system, but you couldn't gain it back. The new system that they got the idea from Pinterest is like a rainbow system. You can, if you're good, you get to move back up the scale. And they said they implemented that, and behavior problems went way down. The incentive was good. So I mean, Pinterest is awesome. Please don't think I'm knocking it. I think they're just different purposes. I think Digo is maybe more comfortable for. I don't even know if it's more comfortable.
I think it may be for what you're studying.
Yeah.
But for me and what I'm researching, I totally follow a ton of people who are really into research. But it sounds like it's doing the same thing.
And it could have grown because I got on Pinterest like a year or two ago, and I really
look up
experimented
cooking
with it.
stuff on Pinterest stuff.
My wife looks at a lot of cooking and health stuff, and I didn't mean to make it sound like it was just because there's education boards and there's I didn't even mean that. Like I can get on it.
I know.
Okay, here we go.
I'm not trying. I just didn't know.
There are a lot of education boards. I'm specifically interested in instructional design, and there wasn't much of that. There wasn't much open education, but that was 2 years ago, and I think there's a lot of that now. So, but experiment. That's really the get on there and figure it out. I think that's the Nintendo generation. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. No, you're good. No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I didn't mean to sound.
I didn't mean to sound the other way. So see you later.